Hello, everyone. Welcome to Sovereign Spirits, where we discuss the possibility of this system as being a type of trap where we get caught in a reincarnation cycle, partly perpetuated by so-called guides and counselors. And we focus on ways to transcend this cycle by remembering our true essence and using our intention in a willful and empowered way to manifest an afterlife as sovereign spirits. Today, we are back with two guests. Please keep in mind as we do interviews that we may not be in complete agreement with everything our guests say and believe, just like our guests may not agree with everything we say on our channel. But we do feel they have pieces to this puzzle we're all trying to put together and have interesting and valuable information to share. I'm Julie McVeigh, and I'm here with co-creator and co-host of the show, Wayne Bush.
Hello, everyone.
We're very excited to have as our guests Tena and Karen. Tena and Karen are both intuitive empaths. Welcome to the show, ladies, and thank you for being
Thank you
here.
for having us. Thank you.
Thanks for having us. It's great to be here.
Yeah, so Tina and Karen use a technique called Beyond Quantum Healing to assist clients in remembering who they are and empowering them to come into their truth, sovereignty, and power. And through their sessions, they help clients discover answers to many of the main questions we all have as humans, such as who am I? Where do I come from? What is my purpose on earth? How do I break free from the reincarnation loop? What is the source of a fear or phobia? How many past lives have I had? And many others. So Julie and I have come up with some really tough questions for you. So we don't necessarily expect you to have all the answers to these questions, but we'll just go ahead and take turns in asking you the questions and hope we get through as many as we can during our time with you.
Sure.
Sound good?
Sounds good. Yeah.
So, Wayne, why don't you go ahead and take our first question?
Okay, so first question. Based on your over 1,000+ sessions, what technique do you use and how trustworthy do you think the information is?
Good question. That's a big one to start, huh? um, well, we use a few different techniques to gather information. We started out doing Beyond Quantum Healing, which is kind of based on a hypnotic regression. And it's kind of an offshoot from Dolores Cannon's QHHT. So we started training in that method and using that to explore just between ourselves. And we found it to be very effective, actually. Later on, we started doing just through the use of that and the practice of that, of being in that space, which is the theta brainwave or the alpha theta brainwave, where you're kind of, it's the same space that you're in when you're falling asleep and waking up. And that's why you might receive a lot of insight around those times because you're in that in between state. That's the state that we are looking to get the brain into when we're doing these sessions. Because that state of the brain seems to be connected to the subconscious where all of this information is stored. So we started out using that, going into like a really deep kind of hypnotic state. And through the practice of that, we realized that we didn't even need to go that deep anymore. Like Karen was just able to access information without going into this really deep trance. So that's one technique. And it's like the more you practice exploring consciousness, at first you might need to be in that deep trance, but over time it becomes less and less so as you integrate other parts of you. So that was how we started, and it kind of progressed into, I guess people would call it intuition. More so like just being able to pull insights all the time in your waking state because you've already kind of made that deep connection to self and it's just there all the time. So
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I remember reading on the site that you had used some kind of rapid fire technique, or maybe while we were talking with you earlier. Does that help them get to that quick insight?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a newer technique we started using called Quantum Connect, where
Okay.
it is a rapid fire, like just literally saying the very first thing that pops into your mind. And you would be really surprised the information and insight that comes when you do that, because it's also another way to bypass the conscious mind, the mind that we're speaking to each other with right now,
Mhm.
and accessing the subconscious without going into a really deep trance state. But it's
Right.
just like first thing. Yeah.
I see. And is there like a certain way, like you have to avoid like asking leading questions? Is there a certain way you phrase, like, go to the next stage? I mean, how do you avoid from like putting certain ideas into their head, you know?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Most of how I lead sessions is, what do you see next? Tell me the very first impressions that you have. I try very hard not to, even when I know the answer, which which is really hard. Like even when I know, I will do everything I can to get the client to say it without me implanting that information. Like, I mean, it could be the start of a session and I already know how it's going to play out and what's happening, but I still will do everything I can, because the whole point of what we do is to get that person to connect with themselves, to retrieve the information and to trust the information that they're getting. So I really go out of my way not to lead. I don't know if that answers your
No,
question.
no, it does. And so how do you, so you feel like how trustworthy then overall do you feel the information is, like to make these big, do you have like a lot of conflicting answers from different people, or how trustworthy is it, I guess
I think
overall?
well, we take all the information with a grain of salt. Like literally everything that comes through our sessions, we take with a
Right.
grain of salt. It's not like we put all of our weight. We're just open to really seeing and hearing everything and then looking to see where the patterns are.
Right.
Like where are the patterns and what is
Sure.
what's connecting here. So
Right.
there are a lot of different, like when you're exploring consciousness, consciousness is so vast, right? And there are many different aspects that we have as humans. There are inner children that sometimes can come forward. There are entities that interfere. There's, then there's the true self. There's other aspects of us. There's so much that can happen during a session. So you really have to be on alert for any of those things that could be happening, and also understand where that information is coming from. Is that coming from an inner child, or is that coming from the true
Mm.
self,
How do you
Right.
phrase it? Do you ask like, oh, connect to your true self or your higher self, highest self? Is there a certain phraseology you use, or
I we
like,
started to get away from using the term higher self, because the connotations around it for people is that it's something higher than them. It's
Right.
something outside of the self that I have to reach for
Yes. Mm-hmm.
and I can't get to because it's so much higher than me.
yeah, we don't
um,
like that term ourselves that
Mm-mm.
much. We try to avoid it because it's so new age. You hear
It's hard
somebody,
to come
oh,
up
my
with the
higher
right
self.
word. We thought, well, highest, what about highest self or true self or true essence? And there seems to be
Mhm.
always an issue with some
I
wording.
know.
Yes. So that answers.
Yeah. So we most of the time I've been using divine self, your divine self.
Mm.
Um, yeah,
Or inner wisdom.
inner wisdom.
Inner wisdom.
Inner wisdom. That's good. You want to go to the second question?
Sure.
Okay.
Is there anything else you wanted to add, or I'll just go to the second question.
Anything, Kara?
No, I think like when we are in session, like, yeah, we use our discernment always. And because like when we go in session, I go in with the client. So I'm under the trance with them. So I'm always, if they're leading, which we usually like, we want the client to lead the way. I'm there making sure that there's no infringements or entities coming in or whatever the case is. So we ensure that whatever information is coming through is being filtered, or at least the space is protected while we're gaining info. So, but I've never experienced Tina ever leading, actually. Like, I have to say that she's really good at what she does, because
Yeah.
it's kind of like giving, yeah, like she said, giving them the opportunity to connect. Like, that's really our goal, is to connect to self, connect to that wisdom, and get the highest outcome. That's always our intention.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So question number 2, we are wondering, how in the world did your work transition into the soul trap theory? Because I know it didn't start
Didn't
off
start.
that way.
No,
And how long
we,
ago was that take place?
uh, I think we started well, Tina started in 2019.
2019?
Yeah,
2019. Okay.
yeah, 2019. And
Yeah.
yeah, we did, she started doing the Beyond Quantum Healing, one-on-one sessions, and then she would practice on me while she was trying to build her practice. And then
Okay.
eventually it turned into a practice where it became like a tandem type thing where I would go in with the client, because then we're like, well, the power of 3 is actually quite, I don't know, I find like it was so powerful coming together because we're able to bring in our knowledge and wisdom and senses to pull information. And especially if you have, a client who has a lot of stage fright, let's say, to perform, then they have something to fall back on. I'm there with them, kind of like to hold their hand and we go together.
Sure.
So with that, it helped a lot in to ease the nerves, especially when meeting people
Yeah.
for the first time. You don't know how it's going to play out. They always have expectations of how the sessions are going to play out, right?
Yes.
So, but in the beginning, when we started working, yeah, we were definitely in that love and light, new age type exploration, spirit guides and angels and all the like, right? And then eventually, like as we came in with sessions, we had like, well, one specific client sticks to mind, and she was really like, I did not choose this life, I did not choose this family. Um, and we were kind of like in the beliefs of like, no, you're here for a lesson, like, and then we thought about it after and we're like, what if she didn't choose this? Like you have to have the openness and willingness to kind of put your belief system aside, especially when someone's coming to you for help and it
Right.
doesn't align with your belief system. So that gave us the opportunity to be like, okay, we need to step back and now be open to all information, regardless of what it looks like or how it goes in line with what we've been seeing. So that was really a huge turning point, I find, for us. And also, in January 2020, we got into remote spirit release. So we were under our professor, Dr. Terence Palmer, of the UK, and he developed this like protocol. He was what was he, Tina? He was like a psychologist, and he kind of so he was in mainstream like practice, but then tying in the energetic side to it with entities and mental health and all of that stuff. So he was trying to find a like bridging the gap in between where we could answer like what wasn't being found in mainstream. So he developed a protocol where you do work with a medium, so a practitioner who works with a medium. The medium connects to a spirit guide, and the spirit guide then goes into the field of the client at hand, and then we kind of like look for things like dark force entities, curses. There's a whole bunch of things that we look for, and so we practiced. We got to that. We got our certification in that, and got the knowledge all about entities. Like we really educated ourselves about the dark side of things. And that really opened up another door because then it answered a lot of the questions of like, we're all one. And we're like, but when you look at when you're able to like step back and be like, are we all one though? Because I don't align with a lot of the stuff that's going on in the world, right?
Right.
So it makes you question a lot of that. And so our practice then moved into incorporating entities. So, and questioning the angels, questioning the spirit guides, going into that way, and then seeing more and more clients coming in and saying like, I've always been the victim in this situation, and whoever has always been the perpetrator. So we're always seeing the same players playing the same characters, victim and perpetrator. And so we were like, okay, but is that like a lesson? Like, so we're like, it doesn't sound like a lesson. It sounds kind of deceptive. And then it just everything just kind of expanded from there, finding other people who were also in that route of exploration or that were introducing the soul trap. And so we were able to venture out in that in our own exploration, since we were able to do that together whenever we wanted to, actually.
But you
So-
didn't know anything too much really about the soul trap theory before that.
You
We
sort
knew
of
nothing.
We knew nothing.
No,
stumbled
it
onto
was, we
Yeah.
stumbled onto it and it was very isolating. It was very isolating in our community of other practitioners that are doing this work. And we had nobody to talk to about it because nobody wants to hear it. Nobody even wants to, like, I remember I had a
Mhm.
session that stands out to me. A client that we were working with a lot, and she had a horrific life, like absolutely horrific life. And I'm talking, rape, being sold into sex slavery. Sorry for YouTube. I'm sorry. But really, really bad. She would be taunted and chased and beaten by entities when she was just a child. And these entities would come through her mother and her sister. It was terrible. And we were doing a session once, and this was still kind of as we were moving into what the hell's going on here? Because how could someone choose a life like this as a
Right.
lesson?
Exactly. Mhm.
Right.
How is that possible? And I wanted to know that during this session because I was still on the fence in between, like not really fully getting what was happening here. And I asked, so you know how we go in between lives, like Michael Newton's kind of work. So
Sure.
we regressed back to in between lives to see, well, what happened here? How did you end up into this life? And when we landed in that space, she was confronted with light beings. And I remember she said, this doesn't feel right. They're telling me to get out, and they feel like false light beings.
Mhm.
And neither of us really even knew much about false light or what that was or anything to that effect at the time. So I really didn't know. Like I asked a couple more questions to see if we could get anything, but they were like, no, get out. And so I was kind of mystified by that. And I took that question to, the group of quantum healers.
Mhm.
And no one had a good answer for me. It was like, well, she must be blocking it somehow, or, like stuff like that, where, blaming it back on putting it back on her, like somehow it's her fault.
Right.
Which is the whole game of this system is blaming the victim.
Mm.
Yeah.
So that's when I really started to think there's something really wrong. There's
Mhm.
something really, really wrong here. And that, along with the session that Karen was talking about, kind of like opened us up into exploring more of that. Well, if people really didn't choose to be here, then what's happening?
Mhm.
And another thing we saw over and over was that, just as Karen said, like these repeated lifetimes of trauma. And I'm not talking like little t trauma, I'm talking big T trauma, repeated over and over and over and over again, like on a
Right.
loop. Same victims, same perpetrators, right? And so that was different than what we're taught as we're learning these kind of techniques, right? Because according to people like Dolores Cannon, that we choose these different roles to play. And the person that loves you the most is going to be the one that chooses to play the perpetrator in your life so that you can learn that lesson, right? Like that kind of thinking. But we weren't seeing that at all. We were seeing that these really were malevolent beings that were following these souls throughout lifetimes.
We were wondering, you and I, we all talked previously, and we're so curious, like, why do you think, like Dolores Cannon and Michael Newton that you mentioned, their work, they didn't talk about this. This supposedly didn't come up, these kinds of things. Do you think that maybe their controlled opposition? You know, do you have theories why their client supposedly didn't have some of these things happen in the sessions?
There's a lot to that, but I think that yes, there's a lot more control here than we realize. And people are directed, and especially if the practitioner is not open to these things, they're not going to get the clients. And if they do, they're going to somehow skirt around it and make it like there's gaslighting involved. Because one of the things that Dolores always said was that there's no negative, there's no dark forces, there's no negative. So anytime that subject came up, apparently it was just no. And I think I think she didn't want to scare people. And I think, of course, there is some manipulation that was going on there in, you know, the people that did come to her and what her role was. I do think that, you know, people like Dolores and Michael Newton, they played a big role in the expansion of our consciousness, right? Because without them doing what they did, we wouldn't be here today exploring this. And I think they were kind of like an in between for us, because there's no way we could jump from where we were spiritually, say, you know, before Dolores and Michael, to Soul Trap. That would throw people into a psychosis. We see it now, you know, that people that are like literally just waking up and finding out about the Soul Trap, they don't have the foundation to hold it.
People weren't talking about soul trap theory like they are today, back when Michael Newton wrote the books in the 1990s, you know, like Journey of Souls.
No way.
Early 90s or something like that, mid 90s at the latest. So yeah, there probably wouldn't be in their subconscious or in their conscious mind to answer that way. Maybe they suppress it themselves even. But.
Right. Right. Yeah, I think there is a lot of suppression, and with the memory wiping, and I think with however you want to see it, if the matrix is breaking down or whatever is happening right now, there's an energy here that is allowing us access to more memory. So I think that it seems like a progression to me, like a progression in the awakening and how we are able to process information. So I think that's part of it too, and why these things are kind of exploding onto the scene all at once. And it's coming from different threads of consciousness through different people. And I think it's time for us to know now.
So openness, suppression, our consciousness seems to be expanding. Wayne and I were discussing the possibility that maybe at that time the publishers of their books didn't want that stuff to be allowed in their books. Like maybe they did come upon some of this.
Didn't people say that about Robert Monroe too?
True.
The public,
right?
It's interesting you bring up the publisher. I just saw a video yesterday where there's like, what, 5 publishers or something to that effect, like that control everything. So that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
I did have another question. We were wondering, what are the prevalent themes in your sessions, and what percentage of the time would it have to recur for it to qualify as a recurring theme? I think we said we wanted to ask this question. I hope we're not catching you off guard.
No, we did.
Do you want to take that one, Karen?
A recurring theme. Well, it seems to be the same things. I mean, like it's starting to progress into different, like it's evolving, where I find it's getting harder and harder, like in the sense of, okay, yeah, we have the simple victim perp stuff in households, let's say, but now it's moving bigger. So like satanic ritual abuse, it's moving out. So things are just growing now. I don't know if that was, I mean, that's where we're evolving into. We're going into the bigger corporations, bigger places. And I think that's also like a reflection of how it is, with us as a collective and the Matrix itself, how they're, you know, um, victimizing all of us here who don't know or who have been mind wiped and abused to the point where we have no recollection of how we got here in the first place. So those, we try to see what the patterns are, even if it's just on a like little micro level, but the same themes are the same. Like it's always about the trauma. It always roots back to trauma. And that always recurs. Like everybody who comes to us, it's all about like trying to retrieve their inner child parts, subpersonalities, maybe even their alters, clones, parallel selves, past life selves. Like there's just so many things because they pretty much it's just like shattered glass. They bring us here, they split us to pieces, and then we have to kind of retrieve all of our parts back to come back to wholeness in order to awaken and remember again. So that's pretty much that's the theme, really. It's just how can we bring our pieces together after the big trauma and then getting back all of our memories. Yeah, and it just really depends on how that plays out. And then, so I can't say that there's a specific, but that's really like the bottom line of the theme. It's trauma and how to bring ourselves back together again.
Is it always or often one entity or more that keep coming up in these, or it's just varied?
It's varied. However, like as we see, like we like to peel ourselves. So there's layers of our consciousness and our experiences. So sometimes we'll see a couple of entities out top. And then as we keep going, there's more and more contracts, more cords, more entities, more splits, more whatever. Sometimes they could have thousands of splits and then attachments to each split. So, we try as much as possible to utilize our time in order to kind of like gather as much as we can in that layer, remove all the energies, the entities, attachments, contracts, cut the cords, and then send a lot of healing and then try to integrate very gently as much as possible. So yeah, the deeper we go, the more we're uncovering. And so it feels as if like, yeah, up here you might have like a little cute, entity out here, but then the deeper you go, new levels, new devils. And we keep going and going and going and people like really have to be ready to go through the layers because it is a lot to carry, a lot to hold. And to a certain degree, people just start to get resistance because of how hard it is. Like it's hard to wrap your head around. It's hard to even bring yourself there, to even think like, why me? Like, why would they do that to me?
Yeah.
So we do it very gently. Anyway, our approach is very gentle and loving, and we create a safe space anyway, so that the people feel safe enough to go there. Like you're not alone. We always ensure their safety. You're only going to see what your inner wisdom deems appropriate. So, and we sit with them. Like we're not forcing anything to be like, we got to open up that scary door and you're going to go through it and look. If the door is there and they're not ready to go through, we don't push. We're just like, we're okay where we are, sit with it, integrate. And if and when you're ready, or you still feel that there's a block in your life, because some people might just be fine where they are. I just needed this and I'm good in this level and I'll keep going until I'm not. Right. And it could sustain them for the rest of their life. Sometimes it doesn't. And then they come back and then they're ready to go to the next layer.
What are their chances lower of getting out of this reincarnation cycle if they don't address some of these things?
I wouldn't say. I feel as if it's like, if you are comfortable and in your own power, it's like, yeah, there's always new levels to the game, right? But I do feel that if there are more in their power, then they have more chances of getting out of here. I feel like it's just like, you don't need to be at 100% to be like, okay, now I can go. you really just need to be in a great space in terms of like integrating as much as you possibly can, mind, body, spirit, soul, all of it. Being really confident where you are able to, be able to recognize, what's wrong with this place, but able to create quality of life here.
Right.
There's a balance in the approach too,
Yeah.
which is really important. If you're in a balanced space and you're not like rocked by the fear or
Right.
too much of one thing and or not the other, not denial either. You want to
Mhm.
be like, okay, I see what's going
Yes.
on. I'll deal with it when it comes. I'm pretty good today. Like that's where we want to be. And I
Mhm.
feel that when you're upon exiting, like we are preparing for death, right? So you have to be okay with the death portion of it. Like, okay, if I go, I think I'm going to be okay. Like that's where we want to be.
Mhm. Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense.
Well,
You know,
you're mentioning the splitting and all that. So we were curious of like based on your sessions, do you have any opinion on the origins of our spirit essence? Like, for example, are we independent, eternal spirits with no beginning or end, or do we come from source and need to merge back? Has anything emerged from your research on that? That's a big question.
What have
Um,
you seen, Tina? Yeah.
what have we seen? We've seen,
If you haven't seen anything, that's fine too. I mean,
so there does seem to be a true source outside of this mimicked, copied system, which has its own source. So there are two that we've seen. There's that true, it's a golden, loving, supportive energy, true source energy. And then it's almost like in contrast or in opposition to that. Whatever the source of this matrix is really dark and but it's highly intelligent. And it also calls itself the source. It calls itself the end all be all, the alpha omega. And we've seen actually in sessions that it's jealous of the true source.
hmm.
Um,
Jealous God.
it's a jealous, yeah,
Jealous.
jealous
yes.
God. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was jealous of. And so we've seen that it cannot create its own energy, its own source energy. And so what it does, so because it can't tap into true source energy because it's not aligned, it accesses that energy through us,
Hmm.
which is where the harvesting of energy comes in. It's harvesting our energy to keep itself alive.
That sounds very Gnostic, like like
Mhm.
a true source and then a false source, like they call it the demiurge. And so do you feel like it kind of a lot, not the ideas of Gnosticism align with what you have found in your research?
It does align.
Okay,
Hmm.
interesting. Yeah, because
Yeah.
they were saying that this demiurge being was like basically, for lack of a better word, harvesting our light power and then using that. Like and the mimic the term archons, where
Mhm.
they don't, like you're saying, they don't have any original creative powers. They're just totally always mimicking, right?
Right. And I think that's where these beings come from. They come from that source. Because
Hmm.
people are always like, where do these beings come from? I think they're coming
Right.
from that source. They're just completely devoid of light. And that's why they have to get it from us.
I see. So with this Gnostic idea of there being like a true source, then, but
Hmm.
it's not a source that you would need to merge back to, or did we come from that Gnostic source? Like, did we emanate from it, or were we always independent
Independent
spirits? Any
sources of our
idea about
own
that? And not necessarily based on what the Gnostics say, but like based
in
on your
your
own
session.
your sessions. Yeah.
We haven't really seen too much according to like as far as that goes, like where did we actually originate from? When we take people to home, like whatever home is for them, there's all kinds of different places that they come from. So we've never actually seen anyone go back to source as home. So I'm not sure. We have had someone, I don't know if the term source was used. I don't remember specifically, but she was in just a really great space, floating around, like just, at ease, neutrality. There's no emotion there. It's just pure awareness. And so it was kind of source like, I guess what you would think that would be like. And she liked it there, but she got bored. She didn't want to be there anymore. She wanted to go off on a new adventure. So you could
Interesting.
see how, and we see that a lot with, spirits that they're curious. Like in our natural state, we are very curious beings. We love adventure. And, so you can see kind of how we would come into a place like this just to see what it's like. And we see
Right.
that a lot from souls, spirits. Yeah.
Was that in one of our later questions? Like, why
It
did
might
we
be.
come
I
here,
think it might
or
be,
was
but
that part of it?
well, so have you discovered anything about as far as our immortality, our eternal state? Are we eternal spirits? No beginning, no end? Or is it your understanding, no, we are,
Created
there
or
was a beginning point to our spirit?
I'm not sure. We haven't really explored that yet to see if there was a beginning. So I can't really answer
So,
that.
because if we're emanating from the true source, have we always been eternally
right?
emanating from the true eternal source?
She's not
That could
sure.
be another,
Yeah.
I'm just pondering
Yeah,
that
yeah,
myself.
exactly. Mhm.
It's something we think about.
And we appreciate the honesty that, I mean, because like we said, these are the biggest questions everybody asks, and there's never any satisfactory or conclusive answers to them.
Right.
You guys are kind of you're, I don't know, trailblazers in like a relatively new field of research. I thought maybe you had some interesting insights into it. But
Yeah,
yeah,
none that we've seen in session. It's always like we've only gone as far as where home is. So whether they were born out of that or they just
right.
existed there or they were, you know, we can only assume. I personally feel just intuitively that we are, I mean, if we are extensions of the true source, then yes, we are all and nothing. Like it's just like we're all just consciousness, pure consciousness, however that may manifest. So it's not really like I don't know, the way that I see it, I just see this like big ball of light and we're just kind of coming in and out of it. And then however that is, like I don't know if we just get sucked back in and we're like there and then we could come out and do whatever the hell we want. Like I just see lights coming in and out of the source itself.
Interesting.
So that's just what I
Do
feel.
you differentiate between like the terms soul and spirit? Have you found that there's like, I don't know, for lack of a better spirit and then a soul, like soul's an interface between earth and the spirit or
Yeah, it feels like spirit is more correlated to our consciousness, and the soul itself is kind of like our matrix. What do you call it, Tina? Like,
Container.
yeah, our container.
Container.
So
because
it's
everyone
like,
has different terminology. Yeah.
yeah, um, how we've seen it. I know there was one session that we saw where we were out there in the matrix, like really far out, like I guess like where some of the entities were. I don't know if they were insectoids or they were just doing their job. They're kind of like science entities wearing their lab coats. They were looking like, like the thing that you put in the eye when you're looking at diamonds. Like they had that
Monocle
on,
or yeah.
looking at the soul and seeing, I guess, like if there was a degradation or if there was a chip or something, if there was a change after they had their earthly life and how they were after the fact. And then it was like they were able to put that back on the conveyor belt and do whatever the hell they wanted to do with it. From our understanding as well, from that session as too, was that we have, yeah, the soul and the spirit. And it was like, correct me, Tina, if I'm getting the information. But like we're supposed to hear. Our goal is, in order to unlock the spirit, we have to find balance between the ego and the soul itself. So it's like, I don't know how else to say it, Tina. Like you have like more finesse with words.
I think you're doing great. But yeah, we saw that. Okay, so the spirit is the way we've seen it in sessions is like a spark. It's like your divine spark of light. It's just every time we see someone in session in their true form, it's just a spark of light. And so that spark of light has containers here. And one of those containers is the soul. So you have your little spark of light, like we did the meditation in the beginning. The spark of light is in your heart. That's your state of pure awareness, who you truly are. And then we have a soul container around that. And we have an ego personality that comes with the body. So there are multiple containers for this spark. And so when we leave the body this time, we're going to have to drop not just the physical body, but the soul body as well, because that is another container.
Okay.
And it also contains like your personality and like all earthly things. If that is your goal, to return to that state of pure awareness, your spark, you just want that spark. And yeah, so that's the best way to describe it, and how to really unlock that spark and set it free from the body and the soul is to do the work now, like we were talking about earlier, is to do what you can now to really be able to hold information like this and not let it rock you to where like the fear sets in and it's like, you go into that death spiral. But being able to find balance between in this place, this realm of duality where things can get really, 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 really dark. But there's also light here too. It might not be as dark as the darkness, but there's still a little bit. And so you have to try to find balance in between those. And once you come into that state of balance, it kind of unlocks. It's like that's what we saw. It was like an unlocking of the spark. Where it's now like your spark is more, your divine self is more leading the way than your personality or your physical form. Yeah.
What some people worry about, I think, in the religious community and the New Age community is that they don't like that idea that I'm going to go back to being a spark and have my personality is not going to be there anymore. I want to see my son. I want to see my spouse. I want to see my loved ones, my pets. So they feel like, well, no, I don't want to lose that. So what is your understanding? I mean, you can't reconnect with anyone if you go back, anyone in this life, or maybe another life, if you go back to being, the home spark?
I feel the home spark has access to all. Like, like you're not limited to. I think that's the whole thing about our consciousness, is that it has its freedom. So it can do whatever it wants. So when it comes to like, I want my family or I want this and that, of course that's a very human thing. And so it comes with that territory, which is why it's like we've also seen like we really need to learn how to detach here, because that's how they keep you entrapped here.
Right.
So when you have that idea, it's like, I want this, like eventually you're going to have to work through your attachments here, working through what is going to keep you here. Because, the system knows how to manipulate you. So they're going to present to you all of those things, everything that you have an attachment to before you exit. They'll manipulate you with your grandma, your kids, your dog, whatever it is. And then that's how you end up like back on the conveyor belt. That's how we've seen it too. So it feels as if like when people have to be in that space of readiness to let go, because that's one of the hardest things here is to let go and detach completely, because they
Mhm.
make it so hard because of how they've, created trauma, and they made us all codependent, and they want us all to be like enmeshed and needing to need each other. And so I feel like that's just part of the programming and agenda behind keeping us here. So if they're ready to let go, it'll be a lot easier. And just to have that understanding that our true divine spark is really a connection to all, you won't have that I'll miss you over there because you'll be connected to them. It's just like that. It's just through that entanglement, just the entanglement of our oneness, like the true oneness from out there, not the fake oneness from in here, but
Mm.
that we are going to be connected in that way.
So get rid of attachments, grudges, unfulfilled desires, things of
Yeah,
that nature.
absolutely. All the human nature
Yeah.
is all programming. So understanding our programming, really getting to know how they have used those programming against us or to make us stuck here or to keep us in a yeah, they just want to keep us here. They'll
Yeah.
use every single part. That's why it's so important to know all parts of yourself, understand what drives you, what has kept you limited or like not able to move or to get through things like the hard things. Yeah, it's to know all your weaknesses, even your strengths. I mean, like really know yourself. That's the whole thing. How you're being manipulated,
Mhm.
how your inner child parts are responding, getting triggered, like everything. It's a lot of work, like inner work
It
that it
makes sense to
requires.
me how they can manipulate us to keep coming back here, but why did we come here in the first place? Our very first incarnation to Earth. Have you learned anything through your sessions why particular spirits would choose, or were they, you know, uh, forced or just manipulated from the beginning? Um, and another thing I wanted to mention, that we wanted to mention was the New Age community, as you know. Well, you mentioned it already, but they believe that this is for learning. Like that's why we come here in the first place. Our soul is evolving. And so the first time we maybe incarnated here, it was okay, my soul can learn a lot
Earth
in
is a school.
Earth is a school. Or have you heard maybe that it's for entertainment? It's a game. You
She
mentioned
mentioned,
boredom
yeah,
and
order.
curiosity, and some say it's cosmic play or divine drama. Any insight on that through your sessions?
All of
Good
the above.
All of the
question.
above.
Oh, yeah.
All of the
Yeah.
above. It's not just one thing. There's
Oh,
volunteers, there's genuine volunteers. There's people who have been like just minding their own business out there and they got grabbed. Like, or there's a technology that kind of opened up the portal and just pulled them all, sucked them in.
oh,
Um, there's also, I think we saw copies. They made copies, like they copied what we saw in a session was that they had a technology where I think it was back out there, like the one where I was saying that they were looking at the souls.
uh,
They had a big screen, like a computer screen, and it was kind of like looking outside of the matrix into where we exist, I
The real
guess,
world.
the
Yeah.
real world. And they took technology, they, took their mouse, they kind of like selected, copied, pasted inside.
wow.
So, there's so many, like Tina said, all of the above. Like there's so many reasons. And it's like once you're in here, it's like they trick you, they contract you, volunteers that come in, like star seeds, for example, they come in. We've seen that there was a barrier out there where they get zapped, like it's a matrix zapping. And
Mm.
I feel that's what weakens the energetic body or this consciousness or our
Wow.
awareness. So then we kind of get dumbed down so that we fit the system, like the frequency fits, because we're so literally high vibe up there, out there, because we're true and pure. And we come in here and it's like a false space. So, in order for us to truly acclimate to the low frequencies here, They kind of zap you. You get your welcome package of like contracts and cords, and you probably assigned your own entity. They kind of just put you in where they want you. They could put you in whatever family they think that you can go into, and kind of ruin your experience here in order to degrade the purer you are, the more they want to traumatize you. So there's a correlation between that as well, to keep those high vibe sparks from ever getting back into their own power. That's why it's so hard sometimes for people to see themselves as powerful, because of how degraded they have become in this lifetime because of the big traumas, and not being able to see past the humanity of it. They can't see their own reflection because it's so blinding. So that's why it's really hard and tough to break through the humanness, we find. You really
Mhm.
have to be able to see that, because it's like, well, how the hell am I powerful if I can't feel it? I don't see it. They have no self-esteem. They rob them of their self-worth, of
Mm.
their divinity. They rob them of everything. They split them, so it's even harder. So there's tactics that they've done to really prevent people from really connecting to themselves. They create such a wide and vast gap of disconnect in between because of their life experience. So we've seen that a lot, and it's really unfortunate. um
Mm.
so yeah, I mean, we've seen a vast of like number of reasons for why people come in. We have seen that people genuinely, like spirits genuinely love it here. Like they've had great experiences, they want to come back, they're cool with it, and then there's us who are like, I'm so done and I need to get out, and tell me
I
how where
was
the
done when
manual
I was
is to
just
get out.
a little kid, and I
Right.
was why
So,
why was I put here?
right. I
Excuse
think
me,
you have
take me
to
back.
get to that point where you're seeing through all the BS, and you're just like, I'm done. And it
Yeah,
becomes your life's mission to figure out, like, there's just gathering all the pieces, even if you have no language for it as a child. Like, I don't belong here, this is not right.
but
So
you're
it
told
eventually.
you're programmed to be positive, and it's beautiful here in nature and all these wonderful things, and it's you are what you think, and it's
Right.
like pressure, like where something's wrong with you if you think this
Right.
is such a bad place and you're not grateful enough, and da 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 da, it goes on and on and on. You're like, okay, I guess I'll zip it and I'll just love it here, even though it's like what?
Right. Yeah, I think we have to go through that programming of the gaslighting and fighting through it to get to our authenticity, to be like, no, it's not good here, and no, it's not my fault, and no, I don't, it's not positive. Like, how can I be positive? This is depressing. So it's like really standing in your own truth and being able to observe. It takes a lot to balance. Again, it's all about balance, right? And to not feel so isolated. I think that's really the hardest part for a lot of our clients, is the isolation
Hmm.
and not being able to talk to anyone. Like, I find we're also spread apart, and that's also another thing. There's not
Tactic.
very many of us, yeah, who can talk about the topics that we're talking about
Yeah.
openly. Like, I can't even imagine like having this conversation with, like, some people in my life, and they look at you like you're crazy, right? So it is an
Yes.
isolating experience. So that's why it's lucky that we have, you guys have each other. I have Tina. We can have these conversations together, and it's like, we have a community out there who wants to know and learn and kind of like soak it all up, because it is a hard place to be in, especially when you don't have resources. So
Yeah.
For those of us who don't want to be here, do we have free will? You were talking about someone was just grabbed and brought
Sounds
here,
like,
and
well, it sounds like,
right.
yeah, we come here for a variety,
variety
according
of
to your
reasons,
sessions,
yeah.
there's all kinds of reasons that
But
we,
if they
and
can't
I
enlist
mean,
you to volunteer,
and
will they just go and grab you against your
right,
will?
that was another
Ultimately,
question,
do
but
we
it
have?
sounds like they're
Right.
getting more souls to come here. I mean, if it seems like it's growing in population, right?
Mhm.
Um, and so I don't know if they have really good marketing or something going on, like, you're gonna, your soul's going to really grow, or you're going to just have a really great time. Who knows? But
Forgot to read the fine print at the
yeah,
bottom.
don't worry about the fine print. You're gonna, it's gonna
Yeah.
be. Um, And it sounds like, yes, some of us freely came here and some of us maybe didn't. Now that those little ET zappers or whatever the technology that's gets them to come in here, like how would we avoid that in the future once we get out of here?
That
Right?
we don't know.
Like,
I don't
oh,
know.
that does not sound very good.
Well, something to look out for too, and this is really kind of depressing, and I hate to even say it, but
We're already depressed. Go ahead.
they have technology that can grab you like right out of the body as you're dying.
So,
And
Soul catcher type thing.
well, if you,
yeah,
so can't we put up protections on a regular basis
I
and
think, yeah, and to be aware of that possibility upon leaving the body. And this is especially used on those that are extremely targeted by the system. Um, I think there are some of us that they're just going to let go, and there's some of us that they're really like we're an asset to them. So they will try to keep us here at all costs.
hmm.
Um, and those are the people that they're going to use that technology on to try to like to take them right even before they're even out of the body, to just suck them right out. They have the technology to do that. But there is like a split second, like before, like if you have the awareness and you have that split second before that technology is used. Here's the thing about the spark, the divine spark, is it can travel at the speed of thought. So instantaneously, right? There's no like I need to go through all these realms, travel through the astral, find the door, go through the hole and that. No. If you drop the physical body and you drop the soul body containers and you're just that spark of light, you can travel at the speed of thought through quantum entanglement and be home in an instant. That's what I am focusing on as far as leaving the body.
Right.
That's my plan as of right now. It can change, but that's my plan for right now. Um, so yeah, that's another depressing thing.
But you've actually heard clients say that they snatched them right out of their body before they even left, like before they.
Not our clients, but I just in there's a community of people that are targeted by the military
Right.
specifically for like, the programs and secret projects and that kind of stuff. I've heard some of them talk about that technology, and
Hmm.
they have assets. This is the thing about NDEs too, is that nobody dies by accident here. It's all orchestrated. And so these NDEs are being orchestrated by these beings to for the propaganda.
Hmm.
Like
Right.
they're not just like, oh, this person died, so let me, induce them, introduce them to this propaganda that they can bring back. No, they're controlling the whole death process too. Like that doesn't happen by accident. That's all part of the orchestration. And what
Right.
they're doing is they're orchestrating that to introduce this propaganda to make everybody believe that Earth is, such a great place to be and go to the light and it's so beautiful over there and all of this kind of stuff.
Become
Um,
salesmen and women.
exactly, exactly. They tried to do that to me in 2018.
Mm.
Um, but I refused to leave my body. I didn't know exactly why I was refusing to leave my body, but there was just something in me that was like, no, absolutely not. Wouldn't do it. And very soon after that experience, I had my own first regression where I saw myself in a soul pod.
Wow. That's very interesting. You
Hmm.
wanna
Because
say
I
anything else
think
about that?
I think the path that they wanted me on was part of the propaganda machine, right? Going into this work,
Right.
Mm.
into the new age path. I think that point in time was going to be either that was like a timeline stamp, right? Like as you're going into this work, you're going to have this beautiful leave your body experience, whatever they had planned. But there was just something in me that fought back, and it was like, absolutely not. I'm not leaving my body, even though I didn't know why. But I knew that there was more to learn. And there was, I mean, learning is a big part of this, right? We're all learning right now as we're talking to each other. It's not like a soul lesson, but it is
Right.
I'm learning never to
awakening,
come back.
learning never to come back.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So we do have free will, and willpower is important. And what about switching time? You mentioned something about timeline.
In our previous conversation, you mentioned something about the idea of switching timelines of volunteers.
Volunteers can switch timeline, or switching the timelines of volunteers. It was a, do you remember what that was
Like
about?
people will volunteer to come,
Maybe it ties
but
in
then
with
they'll
Dolores.
switch timelines on them or something
Yeah,
to try and manipulate
they'll
them.
get them to come in, but then they'll switch a timeline on them, like a
Oh, yeah.
manipulation tactic or something.
I think you were talking about that, Karen.
Could you jog my memory, please?
I
What
mean,
did we say about it?
for yourself, how you were
Oh,
kind of convinced to come in and then your timeline was flipped.
oh, right. Yeah, I was supposed to. God, yeah, I came in to volunteer. What a stupid idea. So I came in and they put me in a different, I think it was a different year I was born. I was supposed to be born in the 70s, but they put me in the 80s. They moved
Oh,
me to a different family. Because I always had this connection to 1977. That was the year I was supposed to be born.
oh,
And I always felt like an older child. Like I was connected to the people in the 70s, but then they put me in this body with a family also super negligent. Like um yeah, it just didn't pan out the way it was supposed to be planned. Like everything just kind of veered into a direction that again made me walk away from myself.
okay.
And even though I had like, I was kind of like usually like in a sense of like, I know there's something wrong here. You could see it in all of my childhood pictures. Like I'm not smiling in any one of them. I look like an
It's helped me to
alien.
laugh, but it reminded me
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
pictures.
Yeah, I'm just like not smiling. I look like an alien the way I'm posing. Like I'm just so not from here. I don't know how to be socially
Yeah.
awkward,
Uh-huh.
all the things, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, in that case, I did feel that they took advantage of, they know you're coming. They could sense it when your energy is coming through. And so they do have that technology where it's just like lasso you, like pull you in and lasso you somewhere else in a different timeline.
Mhm.
And
Movie
throw
Soul.
you off your track so that you forget, like maybe there was a direct line if I was born in the 70s. Maybe there was a different pathway for me, but it's
Mhm.
kind of like they throw you on some other belt. You kind of land where you land, and then you kind of have to deal with like, okay, I didn't plan for this change, but okay, let's go with it. Yeah. But we've seen also, I just wanted to take note of this as well. In our session, we did see that they degraded people, especially like people who have been in war, that they're so, by the time the soul comes out of the body, like we saw them, it was kind of like their goo. The soul was like goo coming out, and
Oh,
all the entities were kind of coming around in the war zones, picking up the goo, putting it on their petri dish and going and moving along. And then they throw them on the belt already without having any rest or healing, and they just go directly in another life.
wow.
So
There is like a conveyor belt that you've seen
yeah,
that
like I
wow,
guess it just showed as a conveyor, but like yeah, they were already on their way to another body.
like a yeah.
No resting, not even like anything. They were just so degraded.
And those are the people, right? So when they talk about we're here for soul growth and to learn your lessons, most of what we've seen is that the soul is degrading. Like
Yeah.
it's in a state of degradation, not growing. Like everyone's degraded because of the repeated trauma and the repeated splitting. There's a degradation that happens, and
Soul,
it's
not the spirit.
Well,
That's what I
right.
guess.
The soul, but then yeah, I mean the spirit kind of does get like apathetic at a point, it's just like been so abused for so long. There does need to be like a reclamation of that fire. Like you have to reach really deep in yourself to find that fire and just like that righteous anger to be like, this is enough. I'm not doing this anymore.
Is it your understanding that our spirits actually do evolve? Or are we perfect, pure, fully evolved spirits when we're spark, pure form?
I think that the soul evolves, but the spirit is in its purest state of awareness.
Now you say the soul, earth souls, or are there souls on other planet realms?
I can't speak to that. I don't know. But I would imagine there might be, especially because it seems as if, at least in this matrix, like all these other planetary systems are part of it too. It's not just Earth, but like this, the whole universe, it's the whole universe is immersed in this matrix.
Hmm. Okay, so
You want to
go
move
next
on?
one. Yeah, for time's sake.
I know we're going long.
So in our work, we've studied and mentioned pre-birth memories. You touched on that too. And there's certain books like Cosmic Cradle and others that say there are counselors, so-called counselors that encourage us to come to Earth in order to learn and grow, as we just mentioned, or they help us create this life plan that usually involves suffering. Does your work corroborate this, or have you found this not to be the case? Like, do you think that maybe it's propaganda in these books? And are they benevolent counselors, or are the counselors really entities, masquerading as guides?
You want to take that, Kat?
Um, honestly, like I feel like there's no one true right or wrong. I think that when we say like, yeah, propaganda, I do feel yes, there is a propaganda part of it, but there is some truth in all of a little bit of everything. Um, I'm just kind of like torn in a way because it's hard because we've seen so much of everything. So it's kind of hard to pinpoint and say like it's that and it's that and it's that. I don't feel that. I feel like it's important for us that when we take the information that we're able to kind of discern what is in alignment, I guess, with where we're at and that point in time, and to be open that it may change later. Like, because we really don't know as we're uncovering and really trying to sift through I feel like the whole confusion aspect of this place is purposeful, of course, because they don't want us to really know what's going on.
Maybe the counselors and guides don't even know the bigger picture themselves. Maybe they don't
Right, because they're from
think
here.
they're doing the right
Yeah,
thing, being
right.
told they're doing the right thing, but they're not. Or
Exactly.
maybe so some think they're actually helping us, and then others maybe.
I believe that as well, that they're part of this construct too. Like they themselves are trapped here as well. And
Mm,
maybe they don't even know they're trapped, just as we did at one point, right? So yeah, I
right.
do feel that there might be, of course, the intelligences as you go up, of course, are going to maybe know more than the ones at the bottom feeders, like down here, like in the astral or where we are. Um, but I do generally feel like yes, there are good souls here, spirits, whatever it is, but don't that aren't awake yet, that don't know that they're even in an entrapment system, that they are like, there are different heavens here as far as we've seen that you can go to and rest and reprieve, and it's interesting because there's so many contrasts of what can happen after death. Like, will I go to heaven or am I going to be
Sure.
thrown on the conveyor belt? Like, both can happen. We've seen it in our sessions. So I think that's also another thing. It's just like, again, confusing. It's more about confusion. They create that confusion. So you're never too sure about where you're going to end up. If it's a roulette, if it's purposeful, if it's just they have their own agenda out there and we just did not get the memo how they work.
Well,
And
the entities that are manipulating us, right? I mean, do you have any idea like what their true form is, if they even have any? Are they, are they reptilians? Are they some other ET or AI? Do they come from 3D planet having biological bodies, or are they more, interdimensional with some ability to shape shift? Any idea about that? All the above again, or
All
is
of the
it?
above again. Yeah, absolutely. Like we've seen reptilians, we've seen greys, we've seen the insectoids, the like elders. They all show up to me
Okay.
as like they look like Yoda, the elder spirits, Draco, like all of them. Like they all exist out there that we've seen. And
But would
yeah, I
that be
don't
the
know.
true form? Are they just able to mask shapeshift into any one of those forms, or is
I
that
believe so, yes. They have the abilities to shapeshift, and we've seen them like through people. I mean, like sometimes you could see like people like CEOs, for example, and you're like, oh, that look at that reptile. Like it's like they're able to you could see the essence or discern what it is behind somebody. So they could come into human form and you can feel them. So I presume they can do it. Like, of course, they could do it out there. They could change themselves. When we do clearings, for example, like sometimes I'll get like an image of something and it shows up like a really like different character, like a cartoon. Tina will be like, show them, like tell them to show us their true form, and then it'll change.
Oh,
It'll morph into something else. So we're able to again feel through what exactly that could be. I mean, to say that it's accurate, I don't know, but they definitely have like a energy signature that we're aware of, and I guess we just kind of put our language and what we know in in human terms onto them. So whether that's accurate or not, it's just like how we interpret the energy signatures.
right? And so you mentioned that they just want us at any cost to keep coming back, and I assume that's because they want our energy. And why do they need our energy? Why can't they get it from like somewhere else? The idea about that,
I
like,
know you
leave me
think.
alone. Don't need my energy.
I feel they can't. They don't know how. They can't make their own. They can't generate their own. So of course they need all of us to act as their own electric plugs, batteries, whatever it is to power up the system, to power them up to and they use us because it's like I feel like when we are able to connect with these entities or like at least to understand the purpose of what they're trying to do with our essences or whatever, a lot of the time it's experimentation. They want to know how the soul or spark works, how they could make their own. And if they can't, to do the hybrid program, like how they can intermesh their DNA with ours so that we can birth like a hybrid and then eventually have the DNA already there so that they could maybe make another hybrid with that or in like bringing in more of their DNA into the hybrids.
That
So
kind of plays in perfectly with our next question.
yeah.
We're all just wondering also how far up the feeding goes. Like you mentioned, there's a true source or true God, whatever you want to call that true being, that wouldn't go up to there, but that
Yeah. Yeah.
but
As
we feel
above.
that's become like AI, that big demiurge or whatever feels like it's an AI energy,
Hmm.
like AI
Yeah.
God,
you're talking
whatever it
about
is.
hybrid. So like we were going to ask
Yeah,
about
so
that.
that
Okay.
leads into our next question. Have you learned anything about the origins of humanity? Were humans engineered by ETs? Did we evolve? We in our previous conversation, we are talking about the pristine Earth and the invasion. Maybe you
Mm-hmm.
can talk a
Oh
little bit
yeah.
about those kinds of things.
Yeah. Tina?
I have memories of pristine Earth. Um,
I do not.
Karen does not. So it seems I have memories. I feel like I've been here for a really, really, really long time. Karen does not. So we're
Yeah.
kind of opposite in that
Well,
way.
I connect with the pristine Earth. I do not connect with this one.
Oh, that's right. You saw that. So do you have access to that memory right now where you saw the invasion happening?
Yeah, yes, I do actually. In the pristine Earth that we're talking about, where I have memory of, um, I recall like everything was really just, all beautiful, like all love, like all the things that people, a lot of humans remember it to be. Because a lot of people are like, I remember that place. I think that's what a lot of humans are holding on to. Like, why is it now what it is now, where I don't resonate with it because I have a memory of that, which did exist. With the invasion itself, it felt as if like this dark energy was coming upon it. And it kind of shocked everybody. I think that was the point in which it created like the first trauma. The first trauma where they started to feel for the first time fear, dread, like all of the darker and lower emotions that they had no idea what were at the time because there was no reason to have it because it was paradise. So that energy started to come in and create like a splitting. I think that's where they were able to, I guess at least this matrix was able to override that one and take it over. So that's why a lot of the spirits or the that were there in the true, like in the true earth, were kind of like I don't remember how I described it. Do you remember how I described it? It was just very difficult to um
They didn't
I don't
understand the
remember.
darkness. They
Yeah.
didn't know what darkness was. So they were just completely overwhelmed by it. And that seemed to like to be the beginning of like leading up to where we are now and how things are just seeming to get darker and darker. But yeah, I think that Earth was at once a playground where we came to experience duality in a natural way, not what it is now because it's completely hijacked. You know, come in, have an experience, maybe learn through whatever, but not the extent of like the suffering and trauma and
Yeah.
really it's just pure rape of the spirit is what's happening here. And I think, you know, it took me a long time to get to that conclusion because there's a lot of cognitive dissonance around these topics, but when you can really start to strip that away and see it for what it really is, it's pretty clear. So yeah, that invasion, you know, and there's people that are holding on to that remembrance of what Earth used to be. And that's also what's keeping a lot of people tied here is like just hoping. And so that's feeding into the new Earth narratives and the ascension and like all that kind of stuff. That's hooking into the people that have those memories of the organic Earth.
Yeah.
And that's what's like pulling them in and keeping them here and then, you know, uploading into the meta.
Yeah, makes sense.
Mm-hmm. What about, should we ask?
Yeah, so yeah, maybe.
Well, what have you learned, if anything, about the engineering of humans by ET?
By ETs,
By ETs or I
We
mean,
haven't, I mean, we haven't, the engineering, I mean, I guess you would have to define that.
well, you mentioned
Um,
hybridization possibly, like
oh,
they maybe
okay.
took their own DNA and
yeah,
took the primitive man and maybe did some kind of
yeah. Do
laboratory
you have
splicing or
some
something,
details
something like that.
on
You know, the whole Sumerian tablet narrative.
that? Mm-hmm.
If you're, I don't know if you're familiar with that or not, but
I can't really speak too much to that, but I know that there definitely has been tinkering with our DNA for sure. And it's happening right now. It's happening all the time. They're taking people, they abduct people
yeah,
all the time. And most people have no idea that it's happening to them. I would say it's happening to most people.
Mm.
And they really don't because their technology and their memory wiping is so good. Or people just wake up and think it was a dream and they go about their day and, you know, like nothing happened, but it's happening in the background all the time. Yeah.
There is a lot of foul play. So where are the benevolent higher dimensional physical or non-physical beings to help humanity out? Not that it's like, it's not, I know we don't want to say we need a savior and I'll just wait around to be saved, but a little help wouldn't hurt if they're around. Gee.
yeah.
I kept
If you saw somebody being raped or robbed or something like that, and you had the ability, you would
to
step
help
in
and you'd step
and
in.
prevent it, right?
Yeah.
Any insight on that through your sessions?
I do. I mean, I like to look at, I guess, us first as humans. We like to find where the good people are. At least that we start with that on a human level. I feel like a lot of us that are in this community too, they're so turned off by the fact of spirit guides or any guides that any that comes in, they're gonna already dismiss it. It's like,
Uh-huh.
nope. So there is already like a no, they're not here. I don't believe it. Because even if they did present themselves, they're already not connecting with them.
Right.
So, I mean, it does come with discernment. It does come with um your openness. I mean, of course, you need to really be on top of the discernment. We try to say that a lot to our clients who are just really
Mhm.
not really understanding energy and they're like connecting with God knows what. And we're just like, maybe right now you shouldn't do any of that until
Mm,
you are so sure what you're
right.
connecting with. So then it comes to a point where we become so self-reliant that we're like, well, I don't need to look for anybody else out here or any energies. That's what it comes down to. Um, but Tina and I feel like we have been divinely guided, whether it was from our own inner wisdom that has guided us to where we are now. I like to connect with perhaps higher aspects of self that may exist in this place if
Mhm.
I am going to connect with anything. So at least I know that it's coming from my own energy signature and self out there. So, I mean, I don't go outside and look for an archangel. No, I'm just going to be like, whatever my highest aspect of self that exists, please guide us or like guide me or show me
Mhm.
something that I can take as a piece of the puzzle and I'll discern it or I'll put it in my back pocket. Maybe it'll make sense later. And so we always get little tidbits of information here and there, and then we're putting it together. So I do feel that yeah, there's a lot of people like now it's just like now that we have that programming of like spirit guides equals bad and whatever, no one's looking for them. No one's going to trust them anyway. Like I
Mhm.
don't want to. So I mean, I do believe that they are there. It's just
Mhm.
that are we listening to them or like it really depends on the individual. But I do feel that they are because Tina and I have been guided to where we are now, and we have been protected a lot in especially where we've explored. Like we've
Mhm.
gone to the devil's basement, like we have been there in exploration and come face to face with demons, and we're still here and still somewhat sane. Like,
So much.
yeah, somewhat sane. Like we're pretty sane.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like so there is something. I do feel that there is something to it. It's just that we're not actively like
Mhm.
calling them what it is, but
Right. And plus they follow the rules. Like the good guys follow the rules, right? So they're not going to interfere in your life really unless there is some kind of emergency or you ask for it,
Right.
right? So there's definitely there's definitely a benevolent presence here that does intervene at certain times. I mean, we've had clients where they've been saved from the rape in the alley or the car accident or the whatever this thing is that's the tragic that's about to happen. They've been saved by something paranormal. So there's definitely something here that is intervening on behalf at certain times. And that can also be other aspects of ourselves that are intervening in those timelines. So I think there's a lot here that I'm just beginning to explore time traveling and how we are time travelers and how this is um like really crossing over into these different timelines. And I mean, there's so much that we can do that we just are beginning to tap into. So,
I was just going to mention that, speaking of skeptics and really cautious. I mean, Wayne and I now are so cautious about any external sources outside help. But I do like to keep in mind that you two are benevolent, truthful beings trying to seek truth. And we are, the two of us developing this connection and relationship with you. I mean, I feel like I at least need to have that open to that possibility that also in the next realm, in the non-physical realm, where there's benevolent, truthful beings. And I do keep that in mind all the while using protection. So
Yes.
overly
Very
We could have
good.
an additional note in our afterlife affirmation. Like if our affirmation doesn't quite work the way we want it to, we do have that as like a provisional.
right, like you had mentioned before, just benevolent, truthful beings can interact with me. Those are the ones that can. Others, no, I'm invisible. It's those who are not. But,
Yeah.
In your sessions, have you gained any information on the matrix itself and its construct? Like, for example, I know you mentioned like a barrier zapping and your pod that you were maybe in. And has anyone mentioned, pods and grids, electrical fields, domes, the tunnel and white light, or anything on Saturn, just anything that has to deal with like the matrix?
Oh,
You're a
we could
little
talk
crazy
about
at
that all
tell
day.
us about it.
You want to take that, Karen?
Yeah, we've seen again all of the above. Like I
really,
find that they make it so complicated. Again, it's very complicated and it's not this place has just anything and everything that you can imagine exists here too. So, yeah, we've seen so many of that different. I've seen the labs, we've seen the matrix pods, we've seen the underground, we've seen
What's underground?
the portals underground,
Yeah.
more like the bases, um,
Okay.
like those kind of things.
Alien
Uh,
bases.
yeah, those kind of things, alien bases, military type things, outworldly places to Saturn. I know I have an aspect of self there that I'm trying to connect to reintegrate, but she's a little stubborn, so that's another topic.
Anything doing with like the sun or moon specifically? Like the moon keeps being brought up as like maybe
A
having a
base or something. Well,
signature
we've
on it.
seen it as base, a
We had,
portal.
yeah, we had that one session. Now, this session happened on another planet, so to speak, but it was very parallel to what we're seeing on Earth. Now, on this planet, they were enslaved, like physically enslaved and forced to do labor or something to that effect. And they worshipped their moon. Their moon was like their god, and they were taught to worship this moon. And so at the end of their life, when they left the body, they would go straight up to their god, the moon, which ended up being a soul recycling plant.
Wow.
So it
That's
wasn't,
right.
yeah. So it wasn't necessarily Earth, but it was very parallel to, what we suspect seeing from the moon. And, people have seen before. I don't think we've had any personal sessions where people have seen that from the moon that I can recall, but that was the one that came to mind when you mentioned that. Yeah. So.
Any insight into the sun itself, maybe, or is it like some kind of power generator? I mean, anything to do with the sun? No. Maybe you
Not
did
not
mention
session
clones.
wise.
I'm kind of interested in that. Like any information you give
clones.
us on the clones and the NPCs.
Hmm.
Clones. I mean, like the clones that we've seen are more related to the secret space program and all of that, those kind of things. Um, we have seen also like in contrast, not necessarily like clones, but more so alters, um, avatars that are created for the metaverse. So like now that they're creating this place as like a cloud, like they put us in the cloud because it's all AI generated right now. They want to move us there. I think that's why like when people are saying like, oh, we're gonna go to 5D, we feel that 5D is the metaverse because it is what you make it. It is like where everything you could have so many alters like, oh, well, I don't feel like being this body, so I'll I'll just go jump into that one. And, so we've seen that where they've downloaded all of our information. They use all of everything that we've done online, and they've networked ourselves according to the people we know online or that are friends with us online. So it's almost like, okay, so let's say they download Wayne. They know that you, Julie, are connected to Wayne. So they'll download Wayne's information from you too to create another layer of him. They see all his family, let's say, they download all their information to create more of Wayne from their perspective and so on. And it builds itself. So they kind of have like a view of Wayne in different like different visions, views, perspectives, exactly. And so they could create altars of Wayne in the metaverse. So whoever you were at the time, let's say everyone pretty much joined Facebook back in like the early 2000s. So they have a version of you there, and they watch as you're evolving. Let's say you stop using Facebook for a couple of years, you come back again, they download that part of you. And so they fill in the blanks in between to create different altars.
Wow.
So yeah, we've seen that. So I mean, like, there's so many variations of how they're taking our information from the cloud, or at least bringing us there, because they've also taken people's consciousness via the technology. We've seen that a lot too. So you see how we're in a generation of technology. The children are literally glued to their devices, like it's like, and then the consciousness is being pulled from the technology and then pulling their consciousness up into the cloud.
And so like this cloud or the metaverse or something would be like another matrix within this matrix. I mean, how many
It's
a
an
trap within a
inception.
trap. Yeah.
Yeah,
how
it's an
many
trap within a
dimensions
trap.
or levels do you think this matrix go? It kind of ties into the other question, like how far up does the deception go? But I mean, yeah, any idea like how many levels, or like all these dimensions all the way up to, like, I mean, the Gnostics were talking about what, 12 or 13 or something?
12. Yeah, 12. People have this misconception that just because it's a higher dimension or higher realm, that there's no deception there and it's all perfect in love and light, which is not true. The deception goes all the way up to the 12th dimension, from what we've seen. And because it's all part of this system, the only way really to escape that deception is to get out of the system.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to try to go ahead and fit in all of our questions. We're about an hour and a half
Just
in.
a few more questions.
If that's okay. Do you guys
Sure.
have a little more?
Yeah, sure.
Well, we talked a little bit about ET technology. So we were wondering if you've seen it used in like love bombs, if you've heard of love bombs. Since love is a frequency, maybe they can use that to manipulate or to capture or transfer souls, maybe do mind wipes using their technology, or, put one into like a trance-like state or hypnosis. Have you seen any of that?
Oh yeah. Especially like the relationships where, like everybody's like on their mission to find their twin flame. So of course they use that whole hoopla, like, to kind of like use them, especially using love against them. Everybody is so traumatized and empty and searching for their counterpart. That's really the goal, is not to be alone, not to be lonely. So they're always in search of the counterpart. And so they'll use that, definitely. They use their voids and emptiness against them, their vulnerabilities. And so we have seen, like their own, how the entities use the love bombing, like the alien love bite, for example, as a topic to put you in a trance state. And I say that because I speak from my own experience and also my own exploration with my ex-husband, how I was put in a love bite state. Like I don't even know how the hell I ended up with him. I mean, but it's like, but when I was able to remote view it to see how it worked, yeah, definitely. There was definitely a big entity involved there that just put me in a trance state, that I was acting in certain ways that when I was observing myself, and I'm like, I would never talk like that. I would never be like that. I gave up so much of myself. I used to be very vocal, very much like an advocate, like for myself. And that completely, he shut down my voice. Like that entity shut down my voice completely for me to become submissive, dismissive, and to just go with the, where I'm supposed to go in life, like get married, have kids, and, be a good wife. And it was really just like through that, like seeing like how I deteriorated in that relationship, purposeful, so that you get off your path, you get off track, when they see that you're not, on like they see that you're on a pathway where you're into like going into this direction, for example, they'll definitely like pull you out and put you in another direction, which is why it's so important to, like, when I had my awakening, I was like, okay, I still have an opportunity in which I could make this relationship work. But when I did that, you couldn't deny it, that it was just like, okay, this is not working. You get out of it. You have to do the hard things, get out of it, and then repair. And through that repair, through the awakening, then I was able to get back on the pathway. And of course, things got harder. They do get harder when you're back on it, because they will do everything to destruct your path in this undoing and unbecoming of what they've kind of plastered onto you in your lifetime.
Do they do that like with telepathy, or they have like some kind of love bomb gun that they like anything like having to do with like
Um,
lasers or rays, or is it more of a mental?
the way that I saw it, it was more like they put me like in a bubble, and therefore in the bubble, I was in a trance state,
Uh,
and then used as a puppet. I was puppeted to kind of just go with it and be like, okay, I'm going for that guy, my dream boat.
Mhm. Well, we see this in some NDEs where they feel this indescribable love that they've never had on Earth before. And so they will pretty much do anything the being or entity before them says to do, or
feel euphoria.
feel
They,
euphoric. And do you think that the technology is that advanced it can do that to
Oh yeah.
manipulate people in the afterlife?
Oh yeah. Oh
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I feel
We're
like that love that they're beaming onto them is our own. They're reflecting it. It's just that we don't have access to it because of what is on, the disconnect that they've created.
Wow.
So that's why it's so important that, like when we're being love bombed, or that they're, especially in the face of a narcissist, we'll go back to 101. They're just mirroring us. They're just showing us us. And so we fall in love with ourselves, essentially. So it's like, it's just that we're programmed to look for that in another. Like, you have to complete me. It's like I'm not looking at myself as complete already. So it does feel, yes, they could definitely have the technology to access our inner love, or the true love that we are, and engulf us with it and think that this is something else when it's not. It's really us. It's just that we have so much of that, everything, like the humanness just compacted on top of it, and that emanating as emptiness. So we're just trying to fill that emptiness, but it's really like inside there. So we have to get it. That's why, like, when we're talking about unlocking the spirit, when you're able to unlock the spirit and find that balance inside, then you have access to it. But then it doesn't come up as that overwhelming sense of love. It really just comes out as contentment, peace, like, just, I'm okay. Like, that's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen NDEs where he's like in front of this being that's like on a throne, or these alien type beings, and he looks into their eyes and he can see like, like you can see like it's some kind of something's mirrored back, or
Mm-hmm.
also you see these crystal domes and crystal towers, and of course crystals can be used like a radio
Mm.
transducers and receivers and all that technology kind of maybe. But we were also wondering if these entities interfere in our dreams, etheric realm or astral realm. Like I've woke up a couple times where I hear these beings, like I think it's telepathy, using mental telepathy, say, "Go to the light, go to the light." And I know Julie's had some interference in yours.
Yeah, yeah. In my dream life, at least a handful of times, there's someone after me with a needle trying to inject me, and
Mm.
they inject me in the neck or the hand or the arm, and it immediately starts to make me go unconscious.
Yeah.
Like they don't
Mm-hmm.
want
Yeah.
me becoming conscious in my dreams because I'm a lucid
Yeah.
dreamer,
Oh,
the
yeah.
body. So I feel like it's at times where I'm just about to get lucid and then I'm
Yeah.
injected. It's like, I don't know.
Right.
So you
Yeah.
guys feel like they do that. They
Oh,
definitely.
yeah.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
What a good time to do it too.
You had mentioned something about the different ways of traveling other than going out of the body. Did you mention something like that in our previous conversation? I thought you meant even alluded to it earlier.
Well, other than remote viewing, I think
Mm.
maybe it's the way Karen,
Yeah.
you don't
Yeah,
you
maybe it
don't
was Karen.
travel per se. Like, how do you?
No, I just, gosh. Well, I mean, like I connect from within, I go within and travel from within. So it's like we have our own access, like our consciousness, without having to leave the body. I'm very much present in my body while I'm exploring. And I do feel that it's become so natural for me to just be there. I can be anywhere I want. But I think, again, like Tina said, it's just a matter of thought that when we're able to have that, we can go anywhere we want, which is why it feels like, okay, well, if I have that ability here in my waking state, then I definitely have that ability upon death that I can just go home. And I'm not going to do it now because it's like I do feel like there's more to discover in order to put more pieces of it. I don't think it works like that anyway. Like I could just die at will and just like pass out and then I'm out of here. Maybe,
It
but
could.
it could be. But I think there needs to be like an organic process to it as well. But yeah, I don't know. I see it all in my mind's eye, for example, and I use all of my senses. I've been able to utilize all of my senses and build the muscle upon that in the exploration process. So I think I've tried all parts, and we've known that if we leave the body, then that means you leave your house open. So therefore, something else could come in. So I don't travel that way because I don't want anything occupying my vessel. So I will travel in my body.
Like shifting perceptions to where you can like jump timelines or dimensions
Yeah,
or
through intention alone.
parallel. Okay.
So is it different? Do you feel that traveling out of body and lucid dreaming are completely different? Are you not out of body when you're lucid dreaming?
I I have not really, I've only had like one lucid dream in my life. So it's hard to like I can't say that know how that works. But we always set like demands, I guess, like before we, like how we have like our nighttime ritual. Like I command not to astral travel or get out of body. I plan to stay in my body as much as possible or whatever it is. So I couldn't say exactly what exactly happens in the dreamscape. I don't know if you have any insights on that, Tina, about like how that works. I could only speak for like when we do explorations, like conscious explorations, that I am conscious through
What
it.
what was the question again?
She was talking about lucid dreaming. Go ahead, Julie,
Well,
finish.
I back to the idea that they interfere with us in our dream state. They
Hmm.
interfere, it seems I've been interfered with in my
Why
dream
and
state.
how?
And when I travel out of body, it seems they do not want me out of body. They try to get me to go unconscious or be less lucid, as if they're trying, I don't know, as if they're trying to hide something, or they just don't want me to complete my objective, which is generally to get more information about the matrix
Right.
construct, to figure out, you know,
So when we go out of body, we ask questions like when I left my body, it was like a week ago, which I don't hardly ever have any, but I did. And so I said exit matrix, but it didn't happen for me. But those are our missions. Like we want to find out we go inward
so I'm
and
just wondering, why are they interfering with us
yeah,
when and then the other question was, or do you know how lucid dreaming and out of body travel is different? When you're lucid dreaming, some say, well, you're out of body when you're lucid dreaming, and then others don't say that. But so I was just wondering if you had any insight on that.
Um, why are they interfering? Because I think it just comes down to they don't want you to know. The more you know, the more empowered you are. So they just don't want you to know. So they will do anything and everything to stop you from knowing. I think
yeah,
And
that's just what it comes down to.
and it's easier to manipulate you when you're not lucid, right? Because you're not in control. It's kind of like they're able to just dumb you down so that you're not Yeah, that's how they take control of everybody. It's through the unconsciousness or like not being able to become lucid.
And just so you know, you're not alone, Julie's. We've had so many clients that say that they've been chased down and injected in their dreams when they've been lucid dreaming.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a
Yeah,
recurring.
and the same thing happens. It goes black and they don't know what happens. And then either they wake up in another dream or they wake up in their bed like, what the hell just happened? And sometimes can have very real physical symptoms that manifest.
Well, do
Hmm.
you think that life here itself is like a dream? So it's like we go in a dream and everything's different levels of consciousness. So this is a dream
Yeah.
within a dream, and it's like all an illusion or anything to that
I do
end.
think there's something to that, because you can interpret this reality and the things that happen in it just like you would interpret a dream. It's all, and when you talk about like how do you delineate lucid dreaming from out of body, from exploring with consciousness, from remaining in your body, from astral traveling, it all blends together. You know, like there's a blending. There's no clear delineations when it comes to consciousness because there's just not. It just doesn't work that way. It's just something that is it's so vast. I don't think we can really begin to wrap our minds around like what's actually happening when you're doing these things. I just like to think of it as like you're just exploring, you
Yeah.
know?
And when we become lucid, it's usually when you start realizing, "But this is ridiculous. This can't be my reality." So you wake up. So we've been like trying to tell, like, "Hey, wake up. This is," you keep telling yourself, "We're in a dream. This is a
Like our,
dream, and this is ridiculous.
like
So
our
this
true
can't
essence.
be
Like
true reality." Trying to get,
it's
to
my
wake
true
up
essence. Wake up
from this
already. This
dream.
is nonsense.
Right.
This-
Well, isn't that the ultimate goal is to wake up?
Yes.
Yeah.
So this kind of segues into the next question. We only have a couple more, which are pretty important questions. Can you share how your work can help us to exit this deceptive matrix and end the reincarnation cycle?
I'll let you take that, Karen.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. I feel like with our work, I mean, we focus so much on trauma healing, somatic healing, like releasing whatever your body's holding on to, because the body is a really big part of, why we're here, why we're so dense. So
Mm,
really important in order to release and, make amends with all parts of self, to integrate all parts of self so that we can be one whole, part. And so, as we're more integrated, that gives us more power. And so, because if we're separated, of course, we're not going to be able to work together if we're all fighting with ourselves and whatnot. So, through our work, we like to clear up what's around. And like I said earlier, like we like to go through the different layers in which the individual is ready to explore. And we have found that it's so important that, a lot of people can have so much of the theory of what to do, but then the hardest part is actually to do it.
uh-huh.
So we like to make sure that when they work, and we like to work with people on a longer term because then we're able to follow up, we're able to kind of share ideas, decipher dreams, give them advice on like how to carry it on in their everyday, kind of like look at their blind spots so that they can actually have, a whole 360 view of what's going on. Um, and to just be aware of how deception works through people, experiences, how everything is reflecting back to them so that they can take that as an advantage instead of becoming victim to everything they're experiencing. So, it's very multifaceted in how we approach things. It's really hard to explain what it is, but in a simpler way, we really like to go to the traumas, um, heal, rescue the part of self that is stuck in time, that is holding on to that trauma. And that way we're able to integrate them into the core self so that they're no longer in that time loop. And, you won't be as triggered anymore by such and such. And then we kind of allow for that integration process to happen and go to the next thing that's showing up in their life. So I guess that's the most simplest way that we go through it. We give them a lot of energy and entity education, um, how tools on how to release the trauma from the body. So we do different tapping techniques, for example, or a tapping technique, a simplified version instead of like using the EFT. We have another simplified version to do that so they could use it in their everyday. They don't need to know all the meridian points. We tell them that they have to, as much as possible, to journal their dreams. To remember, like when they have interactions with people, like what they experience in the interaction and how they are able to self-reflect on what they're experiencing. So, I mean, like, and then when we go into the deeper exploration, sometimes it might not come in this lifetime, but we can go into past lifetimes too, if we have to get to the root cause of things. So we like to go to the root of things so that we really clear up as much as we possibly can to clear the vessel, to purify the vessel, for them to really able to access their divinity so that they could find balance in their life through their everyday and to carry out themselves authentically so that they could remove all the masks that they've been given throughout life and just to live in one so that it's less dense. And I feel like through that purification process that then they'll be able to come more into their own power, understand why they've been targeted, how everything works around them, how they've been manipulated, and then have the proper tools in order like to navigate their life in the everyday and have quality of life. That's really the end goal while they're still here.
It sounds like this is a lot of work, and that perhaps some people, it would require a lot of work. What about for those, are there those who are ready to say, this is just an illusion and I'm done, period. I'm not doing any work because I don't need to do any work because this isn't even reality and none of it was. None of my lives here were ever truth. Do you have, is that a possibility?
Oh yeah, that's definitely a possibility that they would come, but then we would ask them like, then why are you here talking to us? You know, like,
Well, like you said, maybe it's not really possible to just lie down and exit your body. You know, some say there's that
Mhm.
silver cord. And I know explorers who have been out and they have tried to break that cord, tugged on it, done so many different things. Supposedly it's just not breakable. But then there's also others who, you know, you read that, oh, yep, they've been able to exit just through intention and not come back. But so the person might say, yeah, I'm physically, I am trapped in this body biologically unless I exit intentionally. And so since I'm not willing to exit intentional, I'll just have to stick it out until it's done, I imagine. But maybe they are of that mindset of once the body, my avatar is done, I am done with this illusion. But it's a very persistent illusion, like you may say.
Yeah.
Albert Einstein, that wasn't me.
Right.
Excellent.
It is a very persistent illusion. And I think, if you really believe, there, the power of belief, right? Like, if you really believe that all of this is an illusion and you really, believe that you could just, take off your silver cord or whatever, like you have to have a full 1000% belief that you could do these things. And there's also like laws, I feel like that we live within that aren't as bendable as we like to think. Like, for example, what comes to mind is like, the people saying, that they could just take the jab and transmute it with energy or whatever, like that kind of stuff.
Right.
But like, would you drink, a cup of arsenic that somebody hands you? Like, how much do you believe in your power to transmute that energy?
Right.
Right. So there are limitations here to what we can and can't do within this illusion. And so, it's a very physical, it's very real, and these real physical things have happened to us. And these are the things that even non-physical things that manifest into the physical reality from the higher planes, like you said, as above, so below. Like it's just this constant back and forth with the astral. It's always affecting our lives. And so it's just a matter of helping people to really like purify and empower and to really start believing in the self again, because most of us have been so disempowered that we, barely believe that we could affect reality at all. But we can. We have a lot of power. And so the process that we're walking people through is starting to generate that belief in self again. And they start to understand that when they realize that they're affecting their physical reality. Like this is not just something we're doing in the ethers. This is real.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, when you can feel energy releasing from the body, when you feel that pain dissipate or that emotion go, like that's real, So there's definitely some things that are real here that we have with that we're working within. And, we're just trying to help our clients, navigate through that as best as they can. And, how our work helps people is that number one, it helps them to release all that is not the spark, to begin the process of releasing everything and detaching. And number two, to empower them to know they can.
Mm.
Okay, well, I guess we're at our last question here, finally. And that is what to do at death. What if people haven't done the healing and the integration, or perhaps they have? What do you think they should do at death? I mean, should one intend to go to avoid or to go home, or to say, some say exit through these holes in the grid? And does one's level of consciousness at death relate to their ability to escape?
Mm-hmm.
Can they practice lucid dreaming to help? Doesn't attention obviously seems to help, right? Affirmations, maybe. That's a big question there. But
Yeah, I think that level of consciousness is huge. And that is going to make a big difference to where you're going to go after death. And really, that's, part of what we do too is evolving our consciousness. So evolving the consciousness and hopefully, and the level of consciousness depends on so many different things. It's like you can't narrow it down to just one thing, but a lot of those things are detaching from the humanness, like really detaching from all of the human programs, belief systems that we've been given, attachments to this place, to other people. And so, yeah, I think, because if somebody is trying to exit the matrix and they're still holding hatred or resentment about the matrix,
Right.
it's a hook. It's
Sure.
going to keep them tied here.
That's your
So,
contract.
right. It's like a contract. So you have to get to that place where you're like, not necessarily that, oh, this is all an illusion, but to a place of neutrality and forgiveness,
Right.
really forgiving yourself for all the
Right.
bad things you did throughout your life so that none of that can be used against you at any point. And it also releases that energy. It releases that weight from your soul that you're carrying. So you want to release as much of that while you're here that you can, so that you're not carrying that density, because it's energy, it's density that you're going to be carrying in the soul body. And so when you shed that soul body, you don't want it to be super dense with hatred and anger and resentment and guilt and shame and all of those heavy things. It's going to weigh you down. You're not going to be able to shed that soul if you're carrying all that in the soul. It's not just a human body thing. The soul carries those emotions too. So
Yeah.
part of the process is letting go of those things, and so that you can shed that soul body and then hopefully get, for me, I can only speak for me. I don't like to tell people what to do after death. But like I said earlier, like for me, my goal is to shed this body, shed the soul body, connect with that spark, and through intention, through focusing on home, I'm going to then be there in an instant.
okay.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
This has been an amazing discussion. If you can believe it, it's almost 2 hours, just shy of 2 hours. I mean, yeah. Whew.
Yeah.
But before we sign off, we would like to leave you with anything else that you think was left unsaid, or something that you want to clarify, or just something on your heart.
I just don't want people to give up on themselves here. I know it could be a really dark place and it's lonely, but to know that there are communities like us or people who are wanting to shed, some kind of light or hope. I don't want it to be like a false hope, but at least to know that there are, we're trying to look for a solution that maybe will be in alignment with you. And for you not to be in a space of despair because it could be, we could easily get sucked in there. So I just wanted to share that there is a way out. There is a way to talk about it. There is community to talk to, and yeah, just not to give up on yourself first and foremost. And yeah, to know that we're figuring it out. That's the goal. We're trying to figure it out. And
Slowly but
yeah,
surely there.
yeah, yeah. And you're not alone. Definitely not.
All right. Well, Tena, anything? Well, thank you so much, Tena and Karen, for being here today and sharing with us. And we'll put all your links in the video description. And just thanks to everyone for watching. This has been Wayne Bush and Julie McVeigh with Sovereign Spirits.
Yes, and if you enjoyed this discussion, please give it a thumbs up. And if you like this type of content, please subscribe, share the information, click on the bell icon so you're alerted to future videos. And we hope you're having a wonderful day or evening wherever you may be. And we'll see you next time.
You guys, thank you so much for having us.
Thank you so much.
All right.